Welcome to the year 2047. I'm Jane, Ambassador of the Oaks. I hope you're feeling all right, because in the span of 30 years, your body's cells have turned over 4.28 times. Today, I'm going to take you through the lives of three of my friends, Ming, Olaf, and Ro. Their bodies may look a little bit different from one another, and they live on different places on the Earth, but at a molecular level, they and we are the same.
This oak tree and me, we're made of the same stuff. If you go back far enough, you'll find that we have a common ancestor. That's why our chemistry is so alike.
And indeed, for over 12,000 years, our bodies were made of the same stuff as oaks. Shortly after the last glaciation, oaks began colonizing the world from the equator outwards. Acorns from oak trees were the staple food that allowed people to settle, starting from the areas now known as the Levant, southern China, and the Sonoran Desert. Around 11,000 years ago, acorns became central to these societies. People started making acorn bread, soup, and tofu. These lifeways spread northward and upward, and by about 8,000 years ago, oak lifeways reached Scandinavia and Europe and Siberia and Asia. In the last millennia, however, people began acquiring taste for domesticated landscapes. They started planting things like corn, wheat, and rice, and they loved these plants so much that they cut down oak trees to make more land. It wasn't until 30 years ago, in 2017, that people started connecting the dots between warming climates, thinner soils, and dying fish, and realized we need the oak trees back. And so people began planting them. This is what the world looks like today, with the black areas being oak-rich lands, dark gray having many oaks, and the light gray with very few oaks. As you can see, humankind can be found clustered in the oak-rich regions. Our day begins in Jing-Jin-Ji, a megalopolis that combines what used to be the cities of Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei. It is mid-October, and the second harvest season for acorns. Ming walks with her grandmother to the small mountain in the middle of the city, where stone oak trees drop their fruits on the sunny slopes. Ming's grandmother was one of the first to start foraging here. They are accompanied by a hover basket and a butterfly drone that captures their journey. And today I brought with me a sample of butterfly drone. It is very fragile, so we'll have to stay in the front row. 30 years ago, the nation was competing in a global race to suck carbon atoms from the sky and cool the hot cities. The scientists and politicians determined that oak trees were good at doing that, so they started planting them in urban areas. With climate change, national boundaries have melted to give rise to cities as decision-making entities. At the same time, people have expanded their idea of edible landscapes to not just be cropland, but woodland. While urbanization in the past meant maimed and lopped trees, today's cities boast urban forests as their crowning jewels.
We are a restoration project, and us trying to follow nature's lead and bring all the benefits of trees to our parks and everywhere else in the city that could use a little more green.
Bur oak. This is one that when you plant it, not only do you enjoy it, but the generations after you, even your grandchildren, will enjoy this tree.
As nature often takes its course, the American bur oak species didn't take root because the soils were too basic from the limestone in the city. Thankfully, a native species called the stone oak, the Lithocarpus glaber, started to take root. Elders began foraging acorns like they used to do in the villages, and before long, acorn tofu returned as a household dish. Ming's grandmother always uses the term gathering rather than collecting, because they only take as much as they need. Back home, Ming's grandmother turns on her ferry device, where there are 72 people waiting from around the world. They're here to earn a microcredential for acorn processing. Once they have a microcredential, they can start picking and processing acorns for a living. Bolano culture, the culture of foraging acorns for subsistence, has been spreading widely around the world. Because of this, her deep experiential knowledge around foraging and processing acorns is highly sought after and provides a steady source of income. One of today's students is Olaf, a botanist. His life motto is, "Learn from your elders, design for your children." Today, he is reviewing a lesson on how to pick good acorns while he's leaching some acorns that he just foraged. Olaf lives in Kekertarsvik, or Kek for short. This city is in the now independent Greenland. Today, it's a bustling center for global trade, home to more than 200,000 humans and 500 hectares of oak forest, more than enough to feed the local population and produce flour for oak-poor regions. "30 years ago, this area used to be covered in ice, and at the time, Kek's economy relied 90% on fish exports and 10% on oil. As the ice melted, oak trees started cropping up. A researcher from California named David Bainbridge was an early proponent of Bolano culture, so he gathered some Miwok and Peyote people and started an acorn community. Today, Kek's economy has diversified to include acorns and data storage. And Kek is now home to the headquarters of Bolano International, the world's biggest acorn distributor. Olaf grew up in New York City. Before he was born, landscape architects began designing parks around old oak trees to preserve them. This made it easy for kids like him to forage acorns from public parks and streets. He would follow the squirrels or use a crowdsourced fruit tree map to find trees on public lands. Before long, foraging became common practice in urban areas. Every city had its own handy foraging map that people used to locate oak trees by their species. Today, in 2047, Olaf is walking through Kek's oak forest. There are many species and hybrids of the Quercus genus. Botanists and foresters found that oak forests are much more productive than plantations. To gather the finest acorns required restoring forest ecosystems. Commercial oak orchards could only produce about 1,000 kilograms per hectare, whereas a wild oak forest can produce 6 times that amount. Today, Olaf is feeling adventurous, so he follows the squirrels up into a tree. Lucky for him, he finds a healthy acorn and branch and brings it back to the nursery. Every day, people with micro-credentials come from all over the world to forage acorns. They're still easier and faster to collect by hand. People with micro-credentials can pick out the good acorns and navigate the hilly terrain of the forest better than machines could. Plus, this helped address the unemployment crisis. Young people could make money while pursuing their studies and making art, and working-age men found dignified labor to replace their manufacturing jobs. Luckily, today I have with me 2 freelance foragers who are here to share some Oreokes, courtesy of Bolano International. Please welcome Kevin and Kevin. Foragers exchange the acorns for pay with Bolano, who processes them into flour at an industrial scale. Each harvest season, Bolano processes up to 30,000 tons of acorns, and the flour is then shipped to people all around the world to be transformed into all kinds of different foods, including the Oreokes that you will now enjoy. Bolano hosts a Sunday market every week. Here, people come from all over the earth to purchase their acorn products, and they come both physically and virtually. One of their regular shoppers is Ro, who appears in by other from the other side of the earth. Ro lives about 11,000 miles away. This place started as a scientific research station run by the United States and is today a global experimental community. In 2047, people live fairly comfortably and seamlessly with their machinic counterparts. Because Keck is so central, Bolano can deliver fresh acorn products by Blue Jay drone anywhere on Gaia within 24 hours. Jays have had an intimate relationship with oaks for millennia, and they carry acorns in their mouth to disseminate around the earth. It doesn't take long before Ro receives her package, and it looks something like this, which I will pass around. Two years ago, global temperatures hit a record high. For the first time, parts of Antarctica were completely melted during the summer. A group of thoughtful world leaders pooled together some resources to fund an expedition. A few dozen volunteers from around the world came to build an experimental community that would try out new forms of social living and new technologies, and they broadcast these to the rest of the world. Ro now lives here in the tundra with 2,000 people of all ages. Her job is as an eating designer. Now that 90% of the world can afford the right nutrients, it's up to designers like Ro to reimagine the social infrastructure of eating. Tonight, she gathers with her dining family, 5 warm bodies from across 3 different land masses. The adults begin with a swig of liqueur de bellota from Spain to warm their appetites. Now, lucky for us, we will also get to try some of this lovely acorn liqueur in a moment. So everyone will be receiving a small glass, but please hold on to this until I indicate it's time. For the main course, Ro has recreated the Korean dish Auditorium from her fresh acorn flour that she received today. And she is serving that with some acorn bread from the Miwok people of California. As they eat, they talk about the making process, and a butterfly drone hovers to capture the experience. My ancestors were foragers, and yours most likely were too. For a long time, people lived among the trees and off their fruits. Oak forests, a landscape that was once vital to so many civilizations, can now be important again. For centuries, we've appreciated oaks for their shade, beauty, wood, and now ecosystem services. But their hidden value of cuisine is something we can unearth from distant histories and look forward to in the coming years. The future is nutty. Thank you. And now, in order to return back to 2017 and have a productive discussion around the past, present, and future of food, I'd like to invite everyone to raise their glass, for those who have one. I'll raise my imaginary one. And cheers to the future of food. Cheers. You can have it.